In a country where political power, aviation safety, and public trust intersect, what does it mean when a senior state leader dies in a private plane crash just weeks before a critical local election? And why could the circumstances of this single flight ripple far beyond one runway in Western India? If this crash proves to be an isolated accident, it reinforces long-standing concerns about regional aviation infrastructure. But if deeper failures are uncovered, it could reshape political alliances, regulatory oversight, and public confidence at a moment when India's internal stability and governance standards are under close global observation. This video unpacks what happened, why it matters, and what the consequences could be without rushing to conclusions. On Wednesday, a Learjet 45 carrying 5 people crashed while attempting to land near Baramati, a city in Maharashtra state, about 254 kilometers from Mumbai. All 5 on board were killed. Among them was Ajit Pawar, the Deputy Chief Minister of Maharashtra, and a central figure in the state's ruling coalition. The aircraft burst into flames after crash landing in an open field close to the runway, with footage showing thick smoke rising from the wreckage. The jet had departed from Mumbai, India's financial hub and busiest aviation center, heading to Baramati, Pawar's political base and home city. The purpose of the trip was electoral campaigning ahead of a local contest, placing the flight squarely at the intersection of politics and logistics. Aviation authorities confirmed that 2 crew members and 2 staff accompanying Pawar also died, underscoring that this was not a symbolic loss alone, but a human tragedy involving multiple families and professional roles. Initial information from India's Ministry of Civil Aviation highlighted that Baramati is classified as an uncontrolled airfield. This means it lacks a dedicated air traffic control tower, relying instead on traffic advisories provided by instructors from nearby flying training organizations. Before attempting to land, the aircraft crew sought information on wind conditions and visibility from a local instructor. Winds were calm, but visibility was reported at approximately 3,000 meters, marginal for a precision landing in an environment without full air traffic control support. According to the crew's last communications, the runway was not visible during the initial approach. Moments later, the aircraft attempted to land and crashed. The Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau has opened a formal inquiry focusing on weather conditions, pilot decision-making, airport infrastructure, and aircraft performance. Poor visibility has been cited by local media as a possible factor, but investigators have not confirmed a cause. To understand why this incident carries broader weight, it is important to consider Pawar's political position. At 66, he was one of the most influential leaders in Maharashtra, India's second most populous state and a major economic engine. As Deputy Chief Minister, he served as the second highest elected official in the state government and was part of the ruling coalition aligned with Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the national level. His influence was particularly strong in rural districts, including the sugar-producing regions that shape electoral outcomes and economic policy. Pawar's role went beyond titles. He was known for mobilizing rural voters, managing coalition dynamics, and acting as a bridge between local power structures and national leadership. His sudden death removes a stabilizing figure from a complex political ecosystem where alliances are often fluid and electoral margins can be narrow. National leaders acknowledged his administrative experience and long public service, framing his death as a significant loss to governance rather than merely a personal tragedy. Aviation safety provides the second layer of context. India has expanded regional air connectivity rapidly over the past decade, encouraging flights to smaller cities and airstrips to support economic development. However, many of these facilities remain lightly equipped, lacking advanced landing systems or full-time air traffic control. The Baramati airfield fits this pattern. The crash raises questions about whether political travel and high-value passengers are increasingly relying on infrastructure that has not kept pace with traffic growth. One possible future hinges on the investigation, concluding that the crash was primarily due to weather limitations and pilot judgment within existing rules. In that scenario, the political shock remains severe, but systemic change is limited. Calls for improved procedures may surface, yet the broader aviation framework continues largely unchanged, and the incident is remembered as a tragic convergence of factors rather than a regulatory failure. Another scenario emerges if investigators determine that inadequate infrastructure or procedural gaps at uncontrolled airfields materially contributed to the crash. That outcome would intensify scrutiny of regional airports nationwide, potentially forcing the government to accelerate upgrades, impose restrictions on VIP flights, or revise rules governing landings under marginal visibility. Such changes would carry budgetary, political, and logistical consequences well beyond Maharashtra. The political implications also branch. If Pawar's absence destabilizes the state coalition, local elections could shift balance, influencing policy on agriculture, industry, and infrastructure investment. Maharashtra's economic weight means that even state-level adjustments can affect national growth trajectories, investor sentiment, and party strategies ahead of future national contests. Internationally, while the crash itself does not alter foreign policy, perceptions of governance standards matter. India positions itself as a rising power with expanding connectivity and institutional capacity. High-profile accidents involving senior officials inevitably draw attention to regulatory robustness and crisis management. How transparently and efficiently the investigation proceeds will be watched by partners, investors, and observers assessing India's administrative maturity. At its core, this event sits at the intersection of power, risk, and responsibility. A single flight undertaken for routine political activity exposed vulnerabilities that are usually invisible until something goes wrong. The coming weeks will determine whether this moment prompts incremental adjustments or more fundamental reassessments of how political authority, aviation safety, and regional development interact. For viewers, the key signals to watch are the findings released by investigators, any immediate changes to flight rules at uncontrolled airfields, and how Maharashtra's political landscape recalibrates in response to a sudden vacuum. Stability and continuity depend not on avoiding risk entirely, but on how institutions respond when systems are tested.